What's going on, everybody? Today I will be responding to your guys' college football hot takes. I'm going to start doing these videos probably every week. I like interacting with other college football fans and I like responding to my viewers' hot takes. So if you guys want me to respond to your hot takes, just leave your hot takes when I ask for them in my YouTube community post. But before we get into reading these hot takes, let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you will love this channel because we upload daily college football content. And we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing. And also consider joining my Discord server down in the description below. But without further ado, let's read some hot takes. This first person says LSU is going to go 11-1 next year and win the SEC. Ole Miss will be trashed with an 8-4 record, and Texas A&M is going to be good, and they're going to upset LSU next year. This was a very poorly written sentence, but I understand what you're saying, and I really do like this hot take. LSU is going to be a very interesting team next season, and you may be an LSU fan, and you may be a bit biased, but that is okay, and I like the passion you have for your team, and I wouldn't say it's out of the picture for LSU to win the SEC, and I also like the take you said about Texas A&M being good and upsetting LSU. Texas A&M has stacked up on transfers, and they have a really solid quarterback returning next season, so I think Texas A&M could possibly be a decent team that possibly sneaks their way into the top 25. But I don't expect anything crazy from Texas A&M with new head coach Mike Elko in year one. But I think Mike Elko could do some great things for Texas A&M football going forward. He helped turn a Duke football team around when Duke hadn't been relevant in football in a very long time. I don't agree with what you said about Ole Miss though. I could see Ole Miss going 10-2 or 11-1. They are returning Jackson Dart at quarterback, and they brought in the best transfer portal group in the country, and their defense is shaping up to take a major step in 2024. And I definitely consider Ole Miss a 12-team playoff contender and possibly even an SEC championship contender. And their only two losses were to Alabama and Georgia last season, so I don't think Ole Miss will go 8-4. LSU will also be a very interesting team. They lost a lot of offensive production, but they have a really good coaching staff. And they also have the number 1 2025 recruiting class as of the making of this video. I am a little bit unsure about LSU football heading into next season because the SEC will be stacked. And I feel like they have a lot more improving to do to become one of those elite SEC teams. But they have shocked people in the past, and Brian Kelly is a very good head coach, and I would not count out this LSU team to make an impact, maybe as soon as next season. But the defense needs to be better if they want to be one of those top teams in the SEC. But they've consistently done a great job at recruiting, and they brought in some talented receivers from the transfer portal. So we'll see what's in store for LSU football in 2024. But if you ask me, I personally don't think LSU will win the SEC, but I could always be wrong. This next person says, not really related to football, but Fox's Big Noon Kickoff is better than ESPN's College Game Day. I went to Game Day once and it was fun, but from what I've seen, Big Noon is just a better show. They interact with the audience and they give a good analyst. They have a good group discussing the games and they typically go to smaller schools that don't often get recognized, and this show is only 2 hours. I don't think Game Day is awful and they do give a better analyst on the games than Fox does, but the show is 3 hours, which is ridiculous. They don't really interact too much with their audience besides showing off the signs people bring, and I don't like Pat McAfee, and Lee Corso is sad to watch. He's almost 90 and he looks half dead out there, and I think he is just refusing to retire. You do make some very good points with this hot take. College Game Day definitely has its ups and downs, and I may be a bit biased, but I actually have always liked College Game Day. I like waking up and getting hyped up for all the games, and personally I never really watched Fox Big Noon Kickoff anyways, because I really never had a problem with College Game Day. Lee Corso definitely needs to retire, but honestly I hope we see Nick Saban take over Lee Corso's spot, because that could really help out College Game Day. And I actually really like Pat McAfee. I feel like he brings the energy to College Game Day, and I feel like the atmosphere and fans at College Game Day are pretty awesome. It's really just a preference, but I do prefer College Game Day, but maybe in the future I will tune in to Big Noon Kickoff. This next person says, pretty sure this is a hot take, but Arizona could still be a Big 12 contender without Jedd Fisch, and I definitely agree with this hot take. I know Arizona lost some talent and lost their head coach, but they should still be one of those top teams in the Big 12, with one of the best duos in college football returning, Fafita and McMillan. I originally had Arizona winning the Big 12, but we'll see where I have them when I do my conference preseason predictions. But I guarantee they will be in that top 4 or top 3 range of the Big 12, and they very well could win the Big 12, because I still really like this Arizona team, and Fafita and McMillan are going to be very fun to watch. This next person says, if Boise State somehow beats Oregon on the road, they are going undefeated in 2024 in my opinion. And also they could be in the top 4 at the end of the regular season as well. If Boise State actually beats Oregon on the road, that would be insane. And this Boise State team could definitely finish undefeated if they beat Oregon. They have a pretty easy schedule outside of the game against Oregon, and beating Oregon would be a big time win for Boise State football. I don't know how high they would be ranked, but I would assume they would be in the top 8 range or possibly even higher, depending on how good Oregon is. Boise State versus Oregon is a very underrated game in my opinion, and I think it will help us learn a lot more about this Boise State team. But I don't actually think Boise State will beat Oregon, because I am very high on this Oregon team. But if they were to beat Oregon, I think they would probably go undefeated, and Boise State is actually undefeated against Oregon, so it's not impossible for Boise State to knock off Oregon on the road. This next person says, though many Notre Dame fans might not want to hear this, but at some point the Irish will be forced to join a conference. I completely agree with this hot take, and I think we could see Notre Dame join the ACC, or possibly if the ACC is gone like the Pac-12, we could see them join the Big Ten or the SEC. Conference realignment is going to change the game, and at some point Notre Dame will have to move a conference, and I really do believe that. And there was already a bunch of speculations about Notre Dame joining the ACC, and maybe they don't move to a conference for another 5 years, but I really think it will happen sooner rather than later. And Notre Dame honestly belongs in a conference. They are a consistently good football team, but we will see what happens within the next few years. This next person says Maryland will have a better season this season than last season, even without Talia. I'll predict an 8-4 record for my Terps. I really felt like this Maryland team had potential to be very good last season. They just had a stretch where they were really bad on the offensive side and they were very inconsistent. But next season could be a tough year for Maryland. They lost a bunch of talent and they lost quarterback Talia Tagovailoa. They ended their season on a good note, beating Auburn in their bowl game in pretty dominant fashion though. Maybe they carry that momentum into next season, but I don't see Maryland winning 8 games. They lost way too much talent and they have not made a huge impact in the transfer portal or recruiting like other Big Ten teams have. They could have a solid defense and they could make a bowl game, but overall I'm really concerned about their offense and they have some stuff to figure out at quarterback. But we'll see if Maryland makes any more moves in the transfer portal as the offseason moves along. I just don't see Maryland being better next season. But that's why the games are played, so we will see how they do next season. This next person says Florida State was rightfully excluded from the playoffs last year, and honestly I didn't agree with their decision to leave them out at first, but I wasn't being loud and complaining like a lot of the fans were, and I just didn't agree with it. And I gave my thoughts about it and I tried to be realistic about the whole situation without being crazy about it. And it's kind of hard to explain how I felt, but I felt like it was kind of weird how the one season they leave an undefeated conference championship out. It was the only season we could have possibly seen the SEC being left out of the playoffs. But instead we saw a one-loss Alabama team getting over an undefeated Florida State team. But again, it kind of made sense because Florida State didn't have a quarterback, and I think everyone knew Alabama was the better team. But at first I did feel a little bit bad for this Florida State team and Florida State fan base, and it kind of felt like SEC bias, and I was a little bit concerned at first, but the more as time went by I started to realize Florida State fans were completely overreacting, and after Florida State lost by 60 to Georgia and tried to justify their loss to Georgia in the bowl game, I lost all sympathy for this Florida State team and Florida State fan base as a whole. Because Florida State had so many opt-outs and they quit on their team, when this was a chance for them to make a statement and show why they are the real deal. But they didn't, and people are going to make the excuse that they had nothing to play for. And honestly, if you have nothing to play for, then you didn't belong in the playoffs in the first place, because Florida State players opted out and quit on their team when they had a chance to make a statement. And there's absolutely no excuses for losing by 60. If Florida State would have made the playoffs, they would have got crushed. And that's just the harsh truth. Their defense was decent, but their offense was complete trash. And that is definitely the reality of the whole situation, and people need to move on. So no, I don't think Florida State belonged in the playoffs, and I do think they were rightfully excluded. This next person says Eugene Wilson from Florida will have a breakout year with at least 1,200 receiving yards. Eugene Wilson is definitely an underrated receiver to watch out for in 2024. He had 538 yards for 6 touchdowns as only a freshman, and next season he will be a sophomore, and he will have to step up to fill a bigger role with leading receiver Ricky Purcell leaving the team. 1,200 yards would be a lot of yards and it would put him near the top of college football, but I think there's potential for him to become a 1,000-yard receiving leader. I don't know about 1,200 yards, but Eugene Wilson is a very talented receiver, so we will see what happens next season. But I would predict somewhere around 800 yards to 1,000 yards, but 1,200 yards is definitely possible. I'm going to read one more hot take, and this will be the last hot take of the video. And this next person says, Army-Navy is the best rivalry in college football. It may not be the most discussed, and it may not be for a playoff spot or a conference title, but it's way more than that for these teams. They'll play each other until the end of time. It means so much more to Army and Navy fans, as well as those serving. There's a good reason it's called America's game. And I personally really like this hot take. I feel like I can cover this topic very well, and I wouldn't say I'm very excited to watch these two teams play in the sport of football, because like you said, playoffs aren't on the line. Really nothing within the sport of football is on the line, and these two teams are usually average teams. But if we look at the bigger picture, the Army versus Navy rivalry is bigger than the whole sport of college football, because it is tradition. and it is America's game. And honestly, Army versus Navy is big because it shows how much this country means to us, and this is a game anybody can watch. And at the end of the day, Army versus Navy might not be the best played football on the field, but Army versus Navy will go down in history forever. And it is much bigger than the sport of football, and college football wouldn't be this big without America, and Army versus Navy is the game of America. So I definitely think this is the most important rivalry in college football, and it just means so much to everybody who served, and it means so much to this country as a whole, and it's awesome we could see games like this in the sport of college football, and that's why we love college football. And honestly, if you want to talk about the football that's played on the field, some people can enjoy the ground and pound triple option, low scoring, physical type of game. Everything about this game is just amazing, and I'm glad that Army versus Navy is getting the recognition that it deserves. So let's give props to this hot take, and to everybody who left hot takes, I wanted to say that I appreciate the support you guys have left on this channel. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video. Let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you will love this channel, because we upload daily college football content, and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing. And also consider joining my Discord server down in the description below. But that's going to do it, guys, and peace out.